it's kind of like that generation is dying out. All the old processes they used to use. It just really intrigues me. So
Yeah, when I first started welding, I was in trade school, and I had every I don't know what it was, 6 months or every year or 6 months you could either do welding, machine shop, auto mechanics, and yeah, that was the three, and electrical. You learned to wire house and everything. So I started. I think I was in the ninth grade when I started.
so that was probably
1954, and so I started doing the wiring first, and stayed in there a year, and learned pretty much. They had a house, a metal framed house where you could wire anything in there.
that's cool. That's really good.
And we did motors. We wound motors, armatures, and all that kind of stuff. And I had a Czechoslovakian instructor in there. Mr. Olson was his name. And a very, very devoted man to what he was teaching. And then I went from there to machine shop. Stayed in machine shop probably 6 months and learned to run machines and, do cutting and all that kind of stuff. And then I think maybe the second year, first thing I did was welding. And Mr. Mullins was the instructor. I'll never forget that. That man could take a bare rod and weld just like it had coating on it. And you could see guys trying to.
I know what that's like. I've tried myself.
They stick, and then you could see the rod getting red and then white and then pop. And anyway, you had to learn to weld with a bare rod first. And then we went into how to weld, and it was very good. How to weld, and how to vertical weld was a difficult one, because you've really got to be on your game to do a vertical weld, especially if you got to hit two heavy pieces of metal. Otherwise, you get runs. So, but I could do a pretty good bead at that time. But we did vertical welding, and we did overhead.
Overhead's always fun.
And let's see, I think welding was probably something I enjoyed very much, but you didn't have the protective equipment you have now.
Yeah.
And we had it was a nice shop. Had like I don't remember how many welding booths. It may have been 6 or 12 welding booths in there. And he'd come and inspect. He'd give you a weld job to do, and he'd come in and inspect it. But he wanted you to learn to do a bead first and foremost.
Yeah.
Making sure on a thick piece of metal how you put that little bead in there, and you could trace it all the way down. And he would do. We'd get heavy duty stuff, and what you had to do is take them and grind them down till you had a V.
Like the V groove.
Yep.
Yep, we did those too.
So, and then it was hard. You had to really clamp it down because that thing would bend.
Yep.
And that's been so long ago. Good Lord. So after I did the welding, I came back in the electric shop. I think I finished. I never did take auto mechanics because we didn't have a car, so it wasn't any use of me taking auto mechanics. And Very, very good instructors. We'd go to half a day of school, regular school, and then the afternoon we would spend at the Technical Institute. But very, very good. And the instructor, Mr. Olson, he could speak pretty good English. His son was graduating from high school, and he didn't have anything. He didn't have any trades. And he says, I tried to tell him, you got no skills. You got no skills. If you don't have skills, you're not going to get a job. And jobs were very hard to find then. Very, very hard. You had to go to a big city like Cleveland, Detroit, places that hired a lot of welders. But I did that till 11th grade, and then had to leave school because of the financial stake at the house. So I got a GED, but I trained hard and studied hard for. I went to when I got out of the Marine Corps. I took a welding course, gas welding.
The oxyfuel kind of?
Yeah. Took gas welding in Baltimore, where I lived. And I thought about I went to work at Westinghouse, and they did a lot of aluminum welding. And so I didn't do any aluminum welding there, but we just did the gas welding, and you do the horizontal and the vertical, and that was tough with the welding.
I've never used oxyfuel welding before.
So I took that, and then that was in October of 1962. And the reason I remember it, that I came home one night and they had the Cuban Missile Crisis going, and my wife and I had our oldest son. He was about a year old. Yeah, about a year. And here was a telegram. You talking about shaking me up. Cuban Missile Crisis was ongoing, and they were afraid that there was going to be a nuclear war.
Yeah.
So anyway, there was a telegram. It says, if the president declares a national emergency, you've got 24 hours to get back to the base that you left. Don't bring your car, don't bring your wife, don't bring your children, just you. It's your duty to get here as soon as you can. I said, boy, that worried me, but fortunately it was defused by President Kennedy, or I think I'd have ended up at the Bay of Pigs, or I'd ended up in Cuba somewhere, because they were putting missile sites in Cuba. And then after that, I went to work for building medical equipment. I built medical equipment. Didn't do any more welding, other than have a welder at the house. That welder that I gave my granddaughter's husband.
John? Is that his name?
Yeah.
I forgot.
That thing was 50 years old. I bought that new in 1972. So it would have been, it's 50 years old.
What brand was it? Do you remember?
It was Westinghouse.
I forget what happened to Westinghouse. They sold out or went out of business at some point.
Oh yeah, well, Westinghouse used to be into everything. See, Westinghouse is the plant I worked in. It was a Westinghouse X-ray plant where they made X-ray equipment. So I made all kind of X-ray equipment and thought about getting in welding there, but I said, nah, I don't believe so. There's a lot of smoke, and they had a negative air pressure setup where you didn't get any of the fumes. But I had 3 friends that worked in the lead room where they poured counterweights for the X-ray tables. All 3 of them died from cancer, from smelling the fumes in there.
That's not good.
3, Dick Burks, was one, Roy Renshaw, and another guy who was dying of emphysema whenever I went to work there. It was Mr. Jurgensen, yeah. Mr. Jurgensen and Dick and Roy Renshaw. Roy Renshaw was able to retire before, and he got up one morning and his wife said he was totally disoriented and he had a brain tumor, and it came from that lead room. I wouldn't have worked in there. I'd have walked right out of there before I'd have worked in that place. That was a nasty place. They hand dipped that molten lead, and your face was over the tub of lead all the time. So I said, well, I'll not be working here in this place. I mean, it was right across the bathroom. But the guys that worked there enjoyed it, but I couldn't believe that. Three of my friends died from working in that lead room. So when in 1967, I decided a guy asked me if I wanted a job in the field, and of course I didn't. Had some electrical experience and was pretty good mechanically. And I said, yeah, I'd love to come in the field. As soon as I got in the field, man, I knew I was in over my head, so I enrolled in Baltimore Technical Institute and was in there 2 years. And I'd get a basic understanding of how things work.
Yeah.
And I did that for 35 years. And that was a wonderful job. Wonderful job.
Do what you enjoy. It's the best way to do
Yeah,
it.
you didn't go to the same place every day. You went, we had an area, it was like 200 miles from Roanoke up to Luray, Virginia. We had some equipment in there. Harrisburg, we had Harrisburg, Virginia. Harrisonburg, they called it. We had a whole department there. We had a PM contract, so we spent a lot of time there. But every day was a different problem. And I really enjoyed that. I stayed there, and then 1988, GE bought us, and so they had a big operation in Roanoke, so we went into the office in Roanoke, my buddy and I, and anyway, in 1994, I had like 6 years with GE. They had a staff cut. And here I had a PM contract that was paying $130K a year at the VA hospital. And said, we're going to lay you off, and I knew what that meant. I was 54 years old then. And so I just told the boss, I said, well, I'll go over to the VA and take your PM contract away from me. Which is exactly what I did. Oh, right before yet caused a big uproar. And then they didn't sell anything else over there. Because they had a guy that wasn't doing anything, but he was a long-time GE employee. Rather than asking him to retire or asking him, no. We didn't have any seniority rights when GE bought us. We couldn't transfer any of that. So I had 25 years with Westinghouse and CGR. We got sold to a French company in 1974, somewhere around there. So we had to learn for the French equipment, and it was some beautiful stuff, really beautiful stuff. But I mean, if you have trouble with English, imagine what you'd have with French. You know?
Yeah.
But I had a wonderful career. God's blessed me. I didn't have to dig ditches or mine coal like my father did. But I enjoyed what they did. And then, if you built a reputation with these doctors about equipment,
Yeah.
they would come to you and ask you your advice on a piece of equipment to buy. And so I always told them the truth, you know. And we really had a great, my buddy and I had a great, following down there. So anyway, when we went to GE, things changed. They wanted you to go here, wanted you to go there. And we had, they weren't like the old employer. So when they laid me off, I just said, well, I'm tired of traveling anyway. So I went over to VA in the medical and the engineering department, and I said to the guy that ran it, I knew Bob very well. I said, how'd you like to have an X-ray repairman over here, and you get rid of your PM contract? He said, well, that sounds good to me. So I stayed over there till I retired in '99, and even though I couldn't stand the way the government works. Honest to Pete, you couldn't have an idea unless you had a damn form. They had, no, we got to have a form for that, and it was paperwork. And I said to my boss one day, I said, well, I don't know how the hell you stayed here 30 years. I said, you got to have a piece of paper to do everything. He said, that's the way they work. But I was glad I did, because I got a VA pension. I was there long enough to get a small VA pension and a small GE pension, and an annuity from my years of service with CGR and Westinghouse. So, good Lord knows it'd be hard to do today.
I'd imagine it would.
If you don't do a 401k, you're not looking right. You're not feeling right, and you're not going to do anything right unless you get a 401k. So does your dad have any retirement out where he's at?
I think he does.
Yeah.
Some sort of stuff going on.
You know who bought a snow thrower from us? His son came out here. I didn't even know him. He grew a beard, and Rachel knew him. We had a snow blower that is a monster. I mean, it must have weighed 250 pounds.
You mean my brother?
No, it was Rick. It used to live over here.
Oh, never
I
mind.
bought it from him, and I said, "Is it work?" Yeah. Well, it was a nightmare, but I finally got it to working, and I said, "I can't handle this anymore. I just don't have the hiney to fool with it." So anyway, I got a new one sitting. I just got it. It's a Simplicity, $1,300 for that thing. But even the cheap ones are like
Still expensive.
1,000, up to 1,000. Yep.
Do you remember any of the kinds of rods that you used, like any of their designations?
No, don't remember. I know all of it was coated in,
Yeah.
but I don't remember the types of rod that I used. Now, some of the rod that some of that I gave you was older rod, but I think I bought it here. But I never used the welder, very seldom. I don't even know what's on the market now. Is it easier to weld with it?
I don't know. I've been trying to find old welding rods to kind of test out and stuff, but they don't have near the variety they used to.
Well, you see what happens to welding rods, they degrade if you don't keep them
Yep.
in the refrigerator or freezer. It's better to keep them in the freezer.
I've never heard that before.
Yeah, they kept them in the refrigerator if they were going to be out for a long time. But I had bought a whole, for that welder I bought a whole box of rod, just general purpose rod.
Yeah.
Because I didn't do any I only did arc welding and mild steel. But it's a great thing to have, if you need to weld something. How many people have a welder? How many people know how to weld?
Some people do.
Yeah, and some people don't.
It's a good skill to learn how to do.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get into the pipeline.
Oh yeah. Now they make some bucks.
You have to be like a 4-5 year apprenticeship. I don't remember.
That is a difficult job. You've got to have a steady hand,
Yeah.
and you've got to be able. Now, see, they test that pipe
Yep.
once it's welded, and good Lord knows that would be a. I've seen them weld. And I see, they laying all over that pipe with those big welding machines. No, I don't have any. Shucks, I don't have anything left in them. I got a helmet, old helmet I use. I got a darkening helmet I use. I may get another small weld, not for me, because at my age, 84, I doubt that I'll be around long enough to even use it. So you working tomorrow?
Tomorrow's Monday, right? Yes, it is. Yes, I do. Oh man, what kind of machines did you use? They were like really big ones in the shop, or
Not like you see today. They were Hobart, I believe Hobart. Or Lincoln, I think it could have been Lincoln. Don't remember for sure. But I come from a family of coal miners.
yeah,
That's all he did is coal mine and drink and corrals. My dad that anyway. But it was a tough life. You don't want to live in the coal fields. I watched the supervisor he was the area supervisor for the mining operation. I didn't know what was going on. He walked toward the face of the mine,
yeah.
and all of a sudden he turned around and he was jacklegging it away. And I says, "What in the world's going on?" Out of that front shot a fully loaded engine, and probably was 10 or 15 cars on it. Runaway. And I mean, it was booking. I don't know how it got around the curve, but it did. The tracks it was running on. That thing went down there, and you talk about it. I guess the guys down by the tip mining. See, they had a mining tipple there where they processed the coal. I would guess that they had been warned about the runaway. But you could hear things go. It was like a drunken brawl.
How did it stop?
Hit other mining cars and engines down there at the tipple that were unloading. But I mean, that thing, I couldn't believe the speed of that thing. I bet that thing was doing 50 miles an hour when it came out of there. Because all I saw Mr. Murphy doing is, because that thing, it was a wonder it didn't just come right out of there, had a steep curve, just come right out of there and go right on over the hill, but it stayed on the tracks. Now they had welders there, a lot of welders, because you always had something broken in a mining operation.
I'd imagine.
And electricians, you had to have electricians too. And I think they used, it's either 440 or 480 triphase in that mines. Well, all the mines. They had 440, I know 440 or 480 in there.
What was that exactly?
That's electrical. You got 120 out.
Oh yeah.
You got 480. I mean, that's three phase. That's three phases doing crazy things.
That's a lot of juice.
See, all of our X-ray equipment was three phase. And good Lord, you'd had to have three-phase other than just little standalone units where they did, chest and stuff like that. They didn't have to have three-phase, but they were 240 volts, but the three-phase was all 480, every bit of it. So what's Ethan doing today? He's gone deer hunting. He was deer hunting, wasn't
I don't remember what he's doing now. I'm trying to remember. I think he was going to go somewhere or do something.
he? Is he liking it over there where he's working?
Yeah. He used to work there.
Yeah, that's right. He did. You can't hire anybody. Nobody wants to work.
It seemed like it
That's
sometimes.
Ethan over here. I talked to him yesterday. He come over and looked at the stove. He come over and looked at my new snow thrower. He says I can't fire him because I can't get him to work. He said they'll call off. I said you cannot run they build garage doors. He says he's working in Ohio in another plant up there. That's a drive up there. He's went to try to straighten it out because he didn't make any money up there. So I think he's probably last month he'll be up there. But anyway, he said, just keep in contact with him. If things don't work out in January, call him. And I'm sure he's going to be back here full time then.
Yep.
And he says you can't get people to work. He says it's the craziest thing I've ever seen. He said I got 30 people I'd like to fire, but I said I don't have anybody to replace them with.
Well, I've tried a lot of places. Initially, it was
Then you could get a job for 6 months. You could tell them I can weld for you for 6 months.
Yeah.
But apparently they don't stay long. People. Nathaniel told me that you can't get people to work at Giant, paying them $10 an hour or 9 something an hour over there. That's when he worked here. He said they'll come in and get hired and they don't ever show up. I mean that's crazy. When I was a kid,
Let's get stop that.